Next, I think we need little introduction, but our moderator for the next panel is Christine Arbogast. Christine is the president of the Colorado Water Congress and the president of Kogovsek, I think I said it right, and Associates. She serves as a federal lobbyist for a lot of entities, including Southwest Colorado Conservation District, and she leads in the Women in Water Scholarship. So she's a perfect moderator, and she also came to us with this idea for this panel. So I'm so excited, and thank you, Christine.
Oh, we have one extra mic. Is this on? Yeah. Okay. That was really fascinating. So I think another round of applause for the keynote speaker. Okay, so this isn't going to be a panel about how much better women are than men or anything against our male counterparts. It's just a discussion about women being part of kind of the growing family tree in water. Conservationists, the energy nexus, educators, but there are more women in the professions that are involved in the water community than there used to be. And I think that's evident by the number that are in this room. If you look around, it's different than it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, certainly different than when I started in 1985. And I think it's because there's just more interest in the myriad of those professions by women. And not only are we involved, but this panel is a group of leaders of organizations involved in water. And so we wanted to just kind of highlight that and the leading roles that these women are taking. And the panel's not going to be about data and details. This is going to be more about personalities and ambitions and achievements in leading in water. So rather than introduce them, I'd like for each of you to introduce yourselves and your organization and what it does. So we'll start with Erin.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Erin Karney Spaur, and I serve as the Executive Vice President for Colorado Cattlemen's Association. If you're not familiar with CCA, we're representing ranchers, landowners in all 64 counties of Colorado. We're also the oldest state cattlemen's association in the nation. We were founded in 1867, 9 years before Colorado was actually a state. So we have a rich history in Colorado. We were actually involved in territorial governments in the formation of Colorado. When we look at our past presidents, a lot of them were governors or counties or towns were named after them. I have a rich history with CCA. I'm actually a third generation member. I grew up and was a part of the Junior Colorado Cattlemen's Association, and so I had always been a part of CCA and part of the CCA family. And I really had been involved in policy and saw the effect that policy could have from the local level all the way to the national level. I grew up on my family's ranch in southeast Colorado on the Arkansas River and right on the Fort Lyon Canal. And I now live on my husband's family farm in Johnstown, Colorado, where we, but mostly he, raises barley, mostly for cooers, sugar beets, corn, and pinto beans. And so it's funny how life sends you on different paths, because we always said we're ranchers and we're really bad farmers. And, I think now I'm married to a farmer. So it's funny how life turns out. But I'm happy to be here and happy to be here in this conversation.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chane Polo, and I am the Executive Director of the Colorado Water Congress, coming up on 6 months filling that role, so I'm very proud and excited. I'll start with what the Colorado Water Congress is, for those of you who are not familiar with the organization. We are a bipartisan, member-driven organization focused on water, specifically water advocacy. Our membership is comprised of a diverse group of people. Really, anyone in the water community that has a tie to water is connected to CWC. And that is reflected in our board of directors. I'm sure a lot of us can sympathize with sizes of boards. My board has 36 people on it, which sounds like a lot, and it is sometimes. But it was designed that way with intention and with purpose, because each seat, each board member represents a specific interest, a specific sector, and a specific area tied to water, so that there are questions, if there are questions or queries about what's going on in the water community, we have guidance from that board. Now, I mentioned that we are advocacy driven, so how do we do that? I look at that twofold. On the one hand, we provide platforms and forums for conversation, for relationship building, and for communication. And on the other, tied to that, is the communication itself, the influence to the best of our knowledge, to the best of our ability, to the state agencies that can enact that change. Advocacy, to me, is tied as much to communication as it is to policy, to legislation, to regulation. And CWC and our membership is tied in all aspects of that, both on the state and federal level. So as an organization, we do the best that we can to push forward our water community's priorities, concerns, and issues to those that can make that change happen in those respective areas. Now, I want to share a little bit about myself. For those of you who do not know me, I was raised in Italy and moved to Paris, Texas when I was about 16, so halfway through my high school career. So I have experience and exposure to people that live and work in rural areas from two different countries' perspectives, which puts me in a unique situation. And then I've made my way to Colorado, and I won't get too far into the weeds on that. I know we have a question on that later, but I do believe that your roots, your culture, and where you come from play a key part in who you are as a leader and how you own the work in the area that you do. So I'll stop there.
Well, first, I just want to say welcome to Southern Ute Reservation. I am Lorelei Cloud. I am the current vice chair for the Colorado Water Conservation. I am also I did 3 terms on our Southern Ute Tribal Council. I held the titles of vice chairman and served under 2 different chairmen with that title, and then also as treasurer. And then currently I represent the San Miguel, San Juan, and Dolores watershed districts, which is where we're at right now. I am also a board trustee for the Nature Conservancy. I've received a couple of different awards for my leadership. I received the Nature Conservancy's Nature Advocate Award in 2023, which is a global award. And then also just recently, last year, I received the Water Education's Greg Hobbs New Wave Leadership Award in 2024, which was the first recipient of the retitled name, so I'm very proud of that. I am also a part of the Indigenous Women's Leadership Network, which I was a co-creator of, which I'm very, very proud of, that my organization. And I also, along with Christine, am part of the Women in Water Diplomacy, which is a global network which started in the Nile region. So we're very, very active members in those organizations. So I just want to just say again, welcome to my reservation, and I hope that you enjoy our facility and the beautiful weather that we're having right now.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sonja Chavez. I'm the general manager of the Upper Gunnison River Water Conservancy District. I'm a native Coloradan. I was born and raised in southern Colorado, just west of Trinidad. My family's been in cattle ranching for multiple generations, and you'll see our Centennial ranches down in southern Colorado when you drive up Highway 12. I was born and raised being out in the field with my dad, irrigating and taking care of our animals and stuff, and I just love that. It is a part of who I am and what I do, and so I'm really passionate about protecting our Western heritage and ensuring agricultural resiliency in Colorado. So I have worked for the Colorado. I was a private consultant for a while. I kind of took a non-traditional approach to my career. I finished my master's degree, and I think it was about a month later, had my first child. Decided to be a stay-at-home mom, but really knew that I wasn't really ready to let go of wanting that. When you're a mother, there's so much that you do, but you still want that sort of your brain to be charged by all of those other things and all your other passions. And so I started my own company about a year after I had my first child, and just kept my foot in the door, kept my skills fresh. And then after being home with my kids for 12 years, I decided to take a step out and enter the workforce full time. In doing that, I was so ready to jump into things, and started working for the Colorado River District, and really loved everything about my job. I had been contracting with them for years as a facilitator and coordinator of a federal selenium management program work group, both for the Lower Gunnison Basin and Grand Valley. And then after doing that for about 4.5 years, the general manager position opened up in Gunnison, where I had kept my home, and decided after doing water leaders that I was really ready to take that leap and enter into that leadership position. And I loved every aspect of it. I wanted to be in a small community. I wanted to have connection with our producers. I wanted to know their names. I wanted to work with them on their ranches. And so that's a little bit about me. And the Upper Gunnison really is, we were established in 1959 under the Water Conservancy Act. We were supposed to work with the Bureau of Reclamation to be or develop what was to be a federal Gunnison project up in our basin. And in the late 1970s, early 80s, Reclamation stopped building a lot of the reservoirs. And so we had to reinvent ourselves and figure out what we would do for our community. And shortly after that, it began the fight against transbasin diversions in our valley. And so that's where about 20 years of our time are really occupied. And now we're finding ourselves in a position again to reinvent ourselves and to change with the times. And so really excited about what we're doing, and I look forward to telling you more about that in the follow-up questions.
Great, thank you. So I was born and raised in Pueblo. Started my career as a journalist in small towns, including here in Durango for the Durango Herald. Richard Ballantyne was here. I don't know if he still is, but that's where I began my career, and miss it a lot, actually. But I'm probably better off financially for having switched careers. Then I went onto congressional staff and worked for late Congressman Ray Kogovsek. Sorry, trouble with that. And then when he decided to leave Congress, he started a lobbying firm in 1985. And it was just the two of us all that time until 2017 when we lost him. I've had the pleasure of working for water entities throughout the outskirts of Colorado. I say I live in the donut in Denver, but I live in the hole and work in the donut. So all over the state. And as Chane said, I am now president of the Colorado Water Congress. I'm the chair of the Federal Affairs Committee for National Water Resources Association, and I'm the founder of the Women in Water Scholarship Fund. I'm going to make a shameless pitch for you to go and look at funding for us. It's fundingwomeninwater.com. So With that, let's move on to the next question. So is there a person or an event that brought you into the water community in your interest in your profession? This time, let's start with Sonja.
Yeah, I think first I would really recognize my dad and just being so fortunate to grow up on a ranch. Yeah, it was everything from the water and the animals every day to, working with our family to clean ditches and upstream and downstream water users when infrastructure had to be fixed and stuff like that. So I'll first credit my dad for just blessing me and giving me that opportunity. And then I think next I would really say, I was in college and thinking about pursuing a degree in policy and stuff, and I don't know if any of you have ever taken a government class, but sometimes it can be so boring. So anyway, I started taking some biology classes and environmental biology and took a limnology course, which is a study of freshwater systems, and had a really amazing professor teaching those classes and just fell completely in love with it and really found my connection back to agriculture and water and finding a way to create a career out of it. So I would say those two things.
For me, it would be an event, not so much a person. But when I grew up here on the reservation, I grew up about 3.5, almost 4 miles outside off of Highway 151, so very rural area. And I lived in a house with no running water until I was about 12. And so we always had to, every Sunday, when we got a little bit older, my sister and I, 5-ish or so, it was our job to go with my uncle to his house every Sunday and fill up our water jugs with the garden hose, and then he would take us back home. And so that was our water for the week, and it was primarily meant for the week. And so there was a couple of times when we didn't have water. And my older sister and my grandmother would go out to the irrigation ditch and get the water and boil that, and that was our water until the next Sunday when my uncle would come and get us and to get our water. And then my grandmother got a HUD home, and so we moved across on the other side of our hill, but the water still wasn't very good. It had, because we have naturally occurring methane in our area, we had methane in the water, so we couldn't drink it. We could use it for other things, but we just couldn't drink the water, so we were still hauling water. And my nephew currently lives in that house, and he still has to do the same thing. And so there has always been that part of my life, and I never really understood what or how those events would impact my life later on and what I could use, and because I lean on that experience a lot. And when we talk about indigenous communities, because a lot of indigenous communities do not have access to water, let alone clean water. And so I'm also part of the Water and Tribes Initiative, and that was one of our main goals is they wrote and got it passed through Congress is the universal access to clean water. And so that was very, very, very important, especially when it came to COVID, because a lot of lives were lost because they didn't have clean water.
Thank you. So this goes back to my time at the Durango Herald. The people that inspired my interest in water resources were, and some of you will know these folks and know their names, Sam Maines, who was a water attorney here in Durango. And I do this so often, I'm sorry. Late Chairman Leonard Birch. And when I went to work for the Herald about a month after I got there, I got this call from Sam. Didn't know him from anything. And he said, I'd like for you to come down to my office. I want to talk to you. And I had no idea why. I was a features writer. I really didn't have a beat. And so I think he sensed that at some point in time, I might be covering water, and particularly the Animas La Plata project. And so I went down to his office, and the chairman was there. And they decided that they would offer to be my tutors, if you will, on all things water, including the project. And it just went from there. And living down here, experiencing the start of the construction of the Dolores project and other water issues just had my interest peaked early on, and I worked on a lot of those things when I was on congressional staff. So it started here.
One quick note. So Leonard C. Birch was the uncle that came and got my sister and I to go get water at his house.
Oh my, I did not know that. Yes, so that's where my interest began.
So I was raised in rural Italy on a horse farm. My family is culturally not from Italy. So it was the five of us, my brothers and I, raised on this horse farm. So we learned the importance of our natural resources and working closely together. And then January 1st, 2005, we moved to this cattle ranch in Paris, Texas, in the middle of a drought, which was a very different learning experience in terms of what is important and what matters in life. So natural resources were always a interest in my mind growing up, whether I realized it or not. But as I went to school and then eventually grad school, I realized my focus was, at the time anyway, more centered around energy than it was about water. And then my graduate studies were at the University of Wyoming, where I received my law degree and my master's degree in environment and natural resources in 3.5 years. And on the cusp of graduation, I thought, well, let me go talk to my guidance counselor. 2015 was not good for the energy market. I don't know if those of you in the room remember. And so I thought, gee, I need to start thinking about post-graduation employment. What do? I need help. So I sought out my academic advisor, had a long conversation with her, and she put me in touch with one of the board members of the Haub School of Environment and Natural Resources. His name is Randy Teowen, and I had a cold call with him is what I'll call it. He just said, let's get on the phone and just have a conversation. And so I did, and the next thing I know, he has connected me to a dear friend of his who just happens to be this amazing woman sitting next to me, Christine Arbogast. And I think he sent you my resume and said, just talk to this young woman, give her some guidance. And so, she's living in the Hole of the Donut in Centennial. I'm up in Laramie. She said, let's meet in between and have lunch and keep this conversation going. So we did. And she said, what are you doing in energy? Or with an interest in energy? It's too volatile and unpredictable, I think, were the two words you used. She said, water is consistent. Water is the future. Water is sustainability. If you're going to pursue natural resources, water is the more intelligent choice because we're always going to be so dependent on water. And as a community, as a society, as beings, we're always going to be in need of water. So focus on water and forget everything else you just told me. And then she said, have you ever heard of an organization called the Colorado Water Congress? They always have this summer event. This next one happens to be in Vail, I believe. Come volunteer. Just come help out, talk to people. Let them broaden your horizons or understandings about the importance of water. And just remember, I'm not from Colorado. I'm not from the Midwest. So for me, especially starting my law and master's programs, the appreciation for the significance of natural resources and water, especially in Colorado, just grows with every conversation I have. So I started my first summer conference at CWC with my now husband, and we volunteered and we kept talking, and I just developed this almost immediate passion for water as much as for the water community itself, because to me, water is as much about the resource as it is about the people. And the water community in Colorado is a very open, welcoming, at least from my experience, helpful community. And I thought, if I'm going to jump into this, what better place than to be surrounded by all of these people, by this group, and learn and continue to be a part of it. And here I am 10 years later.
Like I said, I grew up in Southeast Colorado, and as you know, in Southeast Colorado, we've had our share of droughts, and one of my most memorable ones was the 2002 drought. My parents had just completed and had just pursued their lifelong dream of owning their own ranch, and they had put their entire life on the life savings, everything on the line in 2001, and had purchased our place we are on now And we had to really cut our cow herd by 80%. And so in order to make things work, we had, the banker on our front step about every day asking for payments, everything like that. So my dad took a job in town. That meant my younger brother and I were still at home, and we took on roles that we probably shouldn't have been taking on, but my parents trusted us to do that because they couldn't afford any other extra labor or anything like that. And so it was really my brother, I, and my mom that kept the ranch running, whether it was working cattle, working on water projects, irrigating, anything like that. Before school, after school, during the entire summer, that's what it was meant. Also during that time, I significantly remember, I think, on the Fort Lyon Canal, you get a certain number of allotted runs, and they're 72-hour runs of water, and I believe we got 4 that entire summer. As I remember that, I remember how can someone make a living off of, irrigated ground as we're, irrigating hay and some other crops for our cattle. But also during that time, we saw significant interest in coming and buying the ground around us. And I didn't put it together at the time, but as I started learning more and more about buy and dry, those examples were our neighbors. Those promises that were made to those producers of, oh, just sell now and you can lease later, and we'll make sure to keep agriculture going, were the promises made to our neighbors who are no longer there. And I can tell you that there's still problems with those fields that were never remedied. There's still weeds, and they're bailing kochia weeds to this day, and those promises were never made. And that is when I decided, this is not right. This is not right what happened in where we're at in Benton County. It's not right what happened in Otero County, and it's not right for sure what happened in Crowley County. And I really saw that as a reason to stand up, also to get producers to stand up and find a better way. And through my time at CCA, we've talked about leasing models and everything like that, but I think that's what continues to motivate me, is finding a better way to keep producers on the land, but also to realize what is happening and what we have to figure out into the future.
So we're going to jump then from previous experiences and background into how you lead in your organizations. How do you resolve conflict? How do you develop strategy? Those leadership positions that you are all in. And so, Erin, let's start on this end again.
I'll just start off by saying I don't feel qualified to answer this question, because I feel like every day I'm trying to figure it out, especially from a staff level, and also I have 15 board members that I'm trying to lead. As CCA, I feel like we have such a rich background that it's also prioritizing, and every issue that we come across, I have to say, is prioritized. And so it's just finding our way forward. As a membership organization, I have always wanted to make sure everyone feels like they have a voice and included. And that's including everyone's background, and then also ensuring that we have the next generation and younger people coming in. And so I've really, through my entire 10 years at CCA, have really tried to identify younger members or potential members, build a relationship with them, and then also find ways for them to get involved in our 10 steering committees, and really look at finding leadership roles in those committees, pairing them with a mentor or a more experienced committee chair or something like that. Because I always find it's always intimidating, no matter what organization you're walking into, to go in and try to find your voice, but also to figure out how it operates. And with a 158-year organization, we have our traditions and we have our culture, and I think it's acknowledging that. But we always say at CCA, it's advancing the legacy, and it's honoring that legacy, honoring that tradition. But also, one of my pet peeves is always saying that's the way we've always done things. And so looking at, is there necessary changes? Is there anything like that we need to kind of modernize?
I have to note here that Erin's 15-member board is all male. Okay, Sonja, let's jump over here.
Yeah, I would echo some of the same things that Erin talked about. I think I have an 11-member board, and 8 of the 11 members are actually women. They have really diverse skill sets. Some of them are attorneys. I have a research hydrologist, people who have led municipalities, people who are in agriculture, and I have a really great board. And I think, with them and moving them forward, the same thing, adapting to the most recent challenge that's in front of us. It involves some education. I think some planning, helping to establish that direction for your organization. And I'm also passionate, too, about training that next generation. We've created a Water Resources Fellow position within the district, and have a really wonderful young woman who has completed her bachelor's degree working with us and helping her and guiding her and figuring out what she wants to do and if she wants to go back to school. And I think it's really important to educate that next generation of water leaders. In our organization as well, we've have a wet meadows restoration program where we are trying to educate that next generation of restoration professionals, and have attempted an 8-person crew composed of technicians from across the federal agencies, as well as our own Upper Gunnison technicians, and have tried that and found out it could be really successful. It's a lot of work, but I think we're continuing to do that. And I think one of the things we emphasize in our organization is also partnerships. Many hands make for light work, and I think it's really important to look at your federal agencies, your nonprofits, and kind of figure out how you can best work together to accomplish, to be successful at a landscape scale. And so, and I think it's even emphasizing to our staff how important it is to get out and know your constituents, taking the time to go out and meet them in the field, to talk to your producer, to meet with your municipal water providers and understand what their challenges and successes are in order to best move your organization forward. And I think some of the really cool and interesting things we've done, as well as kind of leading and getting that enthusiasm within your community, is to celebrate your rivers and your river systems, to do blessings of your ditches, and to also kind of use some of those environmental social marketing tools to establish a culture within your community about how you value and what you appreciate about water.
Great. Well, I think all of my committees and boards I work with are all pretty diverse, except for the 2 that are primarily for about women and helping the women. But I think in leadership, it's really important to be flexible in your decisions. You can't be rigid. You can't think that only your decision or your opinion matters, because you have to build trust with all of your colleagues, and I think that's very, very important. We heard about relationship building pretty much all morning, and what that means, because everything you do evolves around relationships and the trust that you build around those relationships. But I think it's also very important that you have the same vision. Everybody has the same goals so that you know what you're accomplishing and you don't have everybody kind of scattered and then end up maybe things become conflicting. So you have to keep those in mind, but having it's transparent communication. You have to be able to have hard conversations, but do it in a way that people are going to be able to learn, and you don't degrade that trust that you're trying to build. And so having those hard conversations, that's a skill that really is, you have to learn that skill. And so those are I think, really important parts of having being in leadership positions. But it's also the challenging parts, because not everything is going to be good or go your way. You're always going to have those challenges. But I think taking those challenges, instead of thinking them as being bad, that they're always going to be, you should think about them as being opportunities to learn and to bring your people together. Because if you can do that, I think you can find the innovation in that. And also creating a space where people can be heard. You have to let people talk, because if somebody's mad, you're not going to be able to interrupt them. Just let them talk, because most of the times you'll hear that they just want to be heard. There's nothing to be solved. They don't really have a problem. They just want to voice their opinion. And I think those are really important attributes that leaders really need to have. And sometimes that's even harder. I think what's even harder is setting your own ego aside and really listen to the people and understanding what is going on, because the data will speak louder than your own personal feelings or your point of view. It's having the putting yourself in other people's shoes and looking at the world from their eyes, because that's also important. Because again, you may be coming at a situation thinking that it's one way, but somebody else has a different view, and there's always room for compromising. So that flexibility always has to be part of leadership. And I think it's also important also just to remember everybody is human. You know, everybody has good days, everybody has bad days, but if you can't figure that out, you probably shouldn't be in a leadership position. And if you feel that way, then that's an opportunity just to step back. And I think that's also hard for people who are in leadership positions to understand that you can't fix everything, or not everything has to be dealt with at that time. You always have to be able to find it in yourself to just take a moment to step away and then come back and then address it.
So I echo Erin that I feel completely unqualified to answer this question, given that I'm only 6 months into this role. What leadership, when I think of the question, how do you lead though? I look at it from two standpoints. The first is I'm now the leader of a team. I don't say just my staff, I say my team. And that is crucial, because every role, every team member that I have, and granted I happen to have a small team, but every person that is a part of it has a crucial role to play in achieving the overall goal of the organization. And I find myself fortunate that my experience at CWC has been from the ground up, because that means I've worked through every level of what this organization is, and I can appreciate and sympathize with my staff now, the work that they do, what they're trying to achieve, and I can relate to the day in and day out frustrations, if you will, that sometimes you face in doing your job. So I don't think you can lead without knowing what your team is doing. And so in that sense, I feel really lucky. And I tend to use a sort of roundtable approach to that effect. So when it comes to decision-making that affects my team, or decision-making that affects the organization, I want to hear each of their perspectives. I want their insight. I'm a data or information collector, and I have this habit of trying to inform myself sometimes too much on an issue or a decision before actually making it. But I think hearing different perspectives and different voices is a key part in providing that leadership. And then when you go beyond that to what does it mean to lead the membership, to me it's about providing openness and willingness that your expectations for your member are not any different than what you have for yourself. So from the world of policy, It's about relationship building. We always come back to that, but it's true, or collaboration and partnerships. And how do you build that if you're not willing to make the effort? How do you build that if there isn't a foundation of trust? There are certain steps or elements that you have to go through first before you can get there. And I think that's an example of being a leader, is to say, we need to work on this legislation, or we need to convey this message. I'm willing to come to you, and I hope that in return you're willing to come to me when there are problems, from the ground all the way to the top, because once the problem's too big, sometimes there's nothing you can do. So I'd rather have those conversations, do the outreach, do the road shows, as I know so many of you in this room do all the time, as a show of good faith, that I know that what you have to say, or what one member has to say, matters as equally as I hope they feel that what I can provide will have some semblance of level of significance for them as well.
Okay, so in my consulting work, where I earn my living, I am the boss of me, and so I don't think I really want to share how I lead myself, but I think, tolerance for other opinions, listening to others, not feeling as a leader that the decisions to be made are yours and yours alone. But what I'm figuring out sitting here is that at 71 years old, being a leader also includes the desire and the willingness and having gratitude for learning from others. So just sitting here, I've learned from you all, and now you know why they're leaders. Okay, next question. What's the most meaningful and impactful thing you hope to accomplish as a leader? Chane?
That's a big question. So the Colorado Water Congress was established in 1958 by the Attorney General's office and the Governor's office. That's a huge legacy for me to be stepping into right now. We've gone through 5 or 6, I think, executive directors in these last 60 or 70 years. Don't question my math right now. And each executive director has had his own way of affecting and building Colorado Water Congress, has left their own imprint, if you will, on what this organization was and what it has become. And I'll just pick on my immediate predecessor, Doug Kemper, who held the role for 19 years. And he transformed CWC from a convening platform of 100 or so to a membership of over 2,000, 2,500 individuals, 400 organizations, and successful events that house 750 people as of 2 months ago. That's a complete testament and tribute to him, and I just wanted to give a shout out to Doug for that. I also share that because his focus and his passion was the membership. It was providing that ability for people to connect and to have the networking in the hallways and to build the relationships and have the side meetings and side conversations, and he did that beautifully. What I envision, and granted, I'm only 6 months into this role, but what I see now is a step more towards the advocacy part of what this organization is. It's about reinstilling clarity and understanding on what is the Colorado Water Congress, why should I come to you, and how can you help me? I want that clear communication between the founding principles of the organization and where we can go. And I also want to be able to leave behind a legacy of tools, if you will, for the members to know how to advocate. Because from my 10 years, I guess, at CWC, advocacy can mean a lot of things to different people, and different people have different styles on how they communicate and how they process information. And I think for the sake of what this organization is, to be a go-to of a resource of tools, whether it's single-page fact sheets on a piece of legislation, or what would be helpful for a legislator to know, or be proactive and not reactive, and this is where you can find the information. I'm hoping to elevate what we do to that standpoint where our individual members feel equally as qualified to advocate on their own and not be completely dependent on CWC, but still be able to see CWC as a funnel or a leading voice for that water advocacy messaging.
For CWCB, I think one thing I would like to have is to get more Indigenous people involved in what's going on in CWCB, like in my area, to get more whoever comes behind me. I would hope that they're Indigenous as well too, but as long as the person is there and they're willing to listen to those Indigenous voices, I think is really important. With the Nature Conservancy, I really want to have more Indigenous board trustees, because I think that the Indigenous knowledge is very, very important when we talk about conservation and the practices that go along with that conservation, because that truly is Indigenous knowledge. My Indigenous Women's Leadership Network and creating new water leaders, new leaders, is the main reason why we created this organization, and it was to help fill the gap. When leadership leaves, there's a gap of knowledge a gap of knowledge that's there, because that knowledge goes with the past leader. If there's nobody there to help fill in that information, it's really hard for people to keep moving forward, because you have this learning curve, and sometimes it's a large learning curve to start stepping into an active role in those leadership roles. So, but we're also there to help support and mentor the new leaders that come up behind us, because what we're doing now is we're creating a future for them, because they're creating a future for themselves and for those coming behind them. Because I know as a past leader, the decisions I was making, I may not see the full benefit of that, or the repercussions too of what those decisions are, but the next generation will. And so getting them involved is really going to be important, so that they know why we're making the decisions, and they also can help implement whatever the decision or focus, because again, it's their future that we're creating for them. It's how we're shaping it for them. And so their perspective is really, really important. So having that leadership and that support and the mentorship is really, really important, again, for the youth component. I'm also working with a couple of other organizations and tribes to help create new young leadership with the youth. And I'll go ahead and end there.
Yeah, I think, I would really love, my passion is to be able to see that, there's agricultural resiliency in our basin. And although I know that change happens, I hope to preserve many of those very important operations and the Western heritage, as I said before. I think as well, I think in our basin, I really want to be an intelligent watershed. I think there are a lot of data gaps that we've been working on filling within our basin in terms of our understanding about our water resources. I want to be able to have a gap weather radar station in our basin to help inform our decision making and to live within our available hydrology. I want to be able to develop, we're working right now on starting a process of developing a strategic plan that will carry us into the next 5 to 10 years, that will help to guide our staff when I'm no longer there, in terms of what are those next steps, what's important, and where do we go from here. We've also been really focused. 2 years ago, we bought the other portion of our building, and the idea and the concept was to develop a conservation center, kind of a one-stop shop where people can go to get information that would help them in the management of their lands or on water resources and such. And so we've now got Gunnison Ranch Land Legacy, Fish and Wildlife Service, NRCS, Trout Unlimited, our Wet Meadows Restoration Program, and the Gunnison Conservation District in our building. And I'm really proud of that, and I think that's going to pay dividends into the future in terms of our ability to work and plan together and make progress on the landscape scale within our basin. And so I'm super proud of that, and hopefully we can maintain that as well. And just echoing the tools. I mean, we need more tools. We need to put forth our resources and our funding to fill those data gaps and A lot of that, we're doing a big agricultural return flow study right now because we've had this hypothesis that the way we use our water, we flood irrigate in our basin. It's primarily grass hay production tied to our cattle operations. You know, how do those flood irrigation practices function as those temporary reservoirs or the retiming of the river system that's actually beneficial to late season flows and the way we use our water? And so really helping to fill a lot of data gaps in our basin, and I hope that leaves us better prepared to move us into the future and to address the many challenges we have with climate change that we're going to have to face in the future.
There are so many parallels as each person talks, but I just want to honor our past exec, Terry Fankhauser of CCA, as he really set CCA up as the leading policy voice in agriculture, but also on the waterfront. We have a robust water committee, but also the formation of the Colorado Ag Water Alliance and other things he did for CCA to be the leading voice in the policy realm, but in particular on the waterfront. And I just look at CCA as continuing that, and I think also in continuing that we have to bring young people in and get new voices in. He always told me it takes 10 years before you can even talk water in Colorado. I still don't feel comfortable, and I'm at that 10-year mark. And I think each basin is so different. It's just learning the different basins. But I think having that opportunity to engage and find your voice and finding the mentor. On an overall front, CCA for a long time, but we're finally seeing it to fruition, has bought and purchased and it will be part owner of the Livestock Exchange building on the National Western Stock Show grounds. And this is a significant financial endeavor, but it's not only the purchase of the building. I think it's the purchase and the vision to be that agriculture organization and to the urban areas, to find that urban-rural collaboration, but also the collaboration of all the organizations, ag innovative organizations that are going to find their home in the exchange building. I think it's really a really exciting time to be involved, especially in CCA. I think we can sometimes get so caught up in all, it seems like, all the change and the challenges and everything like that, but I think we have to keep our eyes on the opportunity and keep driving towards those opportunities for growth and opportunities for our membership, because if you don't, it can get overwhelming.
Okay, and I would just say that for Water Congress, it's to continue as president of Water Congress for the next 2 years, continue building it and working with Chane and her team and the board. In my lobby work, I like to accomplish tangible things like Stagecoach Reservoir up by Steamboat, the Arkansas Valley Conduit, get that built. My things like Lake Nighthorse that I was involved in. So I hope to do more of that. But probably my biggest goal is to wipe off the earth of the water community the terms whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting. So I'm really proud of you all, and thank you. When they said time's up, I thought we were gonna get out of questions, but okay, somebody's gonna have to help me because I don't have my glasses on. Are there questions? Okay. Are there questions? See, the women have all the answers. Uh-oh. This is the guy who works with a very powerful woman in water, Becky Mitchell, so have at it, Jack.
Thank you. My name is Chuck Cullum. I'm the Executive Director of the Upper Colorado River Commission, and I have been blessed to work with some brilliant, powerful leaders who are women. One of my observations, and as a question for the panel, is the intense double standard that you all are held to, at least in many instances in the press, in particular, about emotion. And particularly in natural resource discussions where the traditional view is that we are very thoughtful and diplomatic, and we don't raise our voices, and it's all about data. But water has to include passion. So I would ask the panelists how you navigate at least one observer's view of the unique bind that you might find yourself in, at least outwardly.
So clearly I'm not emotional, so I'm not going to I'm not going to answer this.
I guess I'll start. Those of you who've seen me speak before, I am emotional. And I think you have to have emotion, especially when you talk about water. Every single one of you uses water. Every single one of you has emotions that are tied to water. And if we are not capitalizing on that, what are we doing? Because water is everything. Water makes everything work. It can grow things, it can destroy things. But none of us would be sitting in this room fighting for water and talking about water, advocating for water, if there wasn't emotion tied to it. And regardless if you're male or female, you have to use that emotion. You have to be able to even allow other people to use that emotion as well too. Because if we don't, then it's going back, sorry, but we're going to go back to the AI and having, we're like a machine. There's no emotion tied to it. You have to, plants are emotional too. So are the animals and the fish, everything has emotion. So I think you have to be able to use that. And I think for women, we were, you're told if you cry, you show emotion that you're weak. Well, that's wrong. Men show emotion too, but we don't say that they're weak. But we have to be able to show that emotion. You have to show your vulnerability because that's how you build the relationship. At least in my opinion.
I'll jump in the middle of my coughing fit. I'm so sorry. I've had that cold that's had the lingering cough forever, and it just won't go away. But I agree. I mean, I think, we try to listen. We try to understand other people's perspectives. But you also can't be afraid as a woman and a leader in water to know when you have to stand your ground. When you use data and use information to support your position, and you're an advocate for your community, and you need to know when you stand firm and when you stand tall. And I told Becky Mitchell the other day, and I just said, you go, girl. You are doing exactly what the state of Colorado wants you to do. We have to live within our means. And so thank you, Chuck. I appreciate the question.
I'll jump in quickly. Yeah, I like that question too, and my mind is going in 10 different directions on how to best answer this. I guess the idea that emotion is weakness, I don't agree with that. What's the word I'm looking for? I love being underestimated in my ability to navigate our own emotion. I don't assume what the person on the other side of a conversation has going on, what their capabilities are, what their balance is or isn't. but yeah, I like the challenge of being underestimated in that sense, because from my perspective, emotion and passion in the world of advocacy is power. And I think language and the word choices that you use in your messaging is what carries more emphasis than tears or laughter itself. But if you have the strength of voice and the best word choices to go along with what you are trying to say, I don't think there's any better tool than emotion or passion for water advocacy than that.
I agree, and I would just also add that I think we have to recognize that we live in an emotional society, and more than any time before, you can get everyone's attention with emotion or passion more than they react to data, figures, everything like that. And I think if we're going to get attention, if we're going to get someone to listen to us, you have to recognize that you have to bring passion, you have to bring emotion, and you also have to know when to use it too, in order to have the best effect.
I once bought a greeting card. It has a very well-dressed woman with kicking up her back heel, and it says, "Go ahead, underestimate me. This'll be fun." So we need to close it so that you all can have lunch and some networking, and thank you very much.